As I said, my name is Moritz Gekeler. Together with Roberta, Maddalena and Eckhard, Schueler-Hainsch, we developed this game of conflicts. And we would like to take you on a little journey to experience what that means, what that is. You all know probably this graph in one way or the other. And you all know the situation that you're in a TRIZ workshop. Your team started on a journey of innovation and you have identified a concrete problem, but there is no simple solution. As you are TRIZ experts, it's not a problem for you because you know you have the process, you have all the tools. And the problem you're working on, as we heard this morning, might be technological or might be less technological, like we heard from Borneo, from Malaysia, and we heard from Australia about Agile and TRIZ. So in this situation, you might have come to the moment where your team with whom you are innovating is very diverse. So it's composed of non-TRIZ experts. And maybe they come from different backgrounds, engineers, business people, or even HR or other crazy areas. And in this situation, at some point in your workshop, you will face the challenge to really identify the conflicts you want to solve. And these conflicts then, of course, as we all know, will lead you to some solution principles. From our experience, from many workshops and many projects, this is a really tiring task, especially for people that are not trained in TRIZ. By the way, this is also true, of course, for students who are learning TRIZ for the first time. You can, of course, work with checklists on paper or really big Excel sheets in order to prioritize and identify the right parameters. But for non-technical people or non-TRIZ people, these parameters sound very much alike. So it's very difficult, for example, to understand the definition of external harmful effects or the area of a moving object. So this is something that might confuse people. And also thinking through these many parameters is a tiring task. So especially if you're not used to doing this. So because of this, we posed ourselves with an innovation challenge. We asked ourselves, how might we create an experience that allows TRIZ teams to playfully identify the right parameters? From that question, you might see that some of us come from the design thinking world. So let's rephrase it in TRIZ context. So how might we prevent the loss of information of our innovation team when confronted with so many parameters without decreasing the productivity of this team? And from our perspective, the solution to this challenge is the game of conflicts. You can see it here. It's a beautiful game. And now Roberta will tell you a little bit more about how we came up with this game.
Hello. So how did we develop a TRIZ-based game for everybody? The game communication needed to be brought to a level that would make sense to all kinds of people that come from a very huge range of professional contexts, and not just those in the TRIZ stack community or the design thinking community. So first of all, the game had to be fun, simple, and approachable for everybody. We wanted it to look simple and approachable because in this way, it's applicable to every kind of problem or environment. Games for grown-ups as for children are a simulation of reality. So they have a stress release effect on mind and body. And a simulation helps you to test even the impossible. So the cards are big because in your hand they feel small, like in childhood. So your mind goes back to childhood time and your attention stays on the game. And it had to be visual, familiar, and memorable. So the illustrations tell stories about everyday elements or little funny accidents. So it's easy to connect to a personal experience with a single parameter, and in this way understand it and remember it. Innovation is not related to what is common, is not related to standards. It needs visionary and creative minds able to create from available material and intuitions using boundaries as their diving board. So that's why Game of Conflicts is visual and touchable to go over languages. This is at least what we are trying to do. And for now, we have a vision at the European culture level, but we would like to expand this. And it dialogues directly with experiences, inner memory, and creativity. Game of Conflicts allows people to work together, even when they have opposite points of view on reality, as you can see from this slide, and teaches them to consider other points of view as precious elements for the creation of a new path. So this is a shot from our video, our teaser video, and we use that to tell you a possible story of a team. And now, Eckhard, your turn.
Yeah, hello also from my side. Here you can see how the cards are structured. So in the left upper side, you see the name of the parameter. In that case, it's the weight of the moving object. You see a illustration made by Roberta. And really, when you play this game 2 or 3 times, you'll never forget what the illustration stands for and what the card is. And on the lower side, you see some questions that help you to connect the concrete problem we are working on with this abstract parameter. So these questions are helpful. You go through it and you better understand. And then you see on the right upper side 2 numbers. And when we started to play the game, to create the game, we thought about, okay, 39 or 50. What should we do? Should we prepare it for those who are used to use the original Schueler matrix with 39 parameters? Or should we prepare it for 50 parameters according to Darrell Mann's matrix 2010? And what we finally did is we prepared it for both. So you find both numbers in the right upper corner. So our game works with both. We talked a lot about why we did it, how we did it, but until now we haven't shown you a bit about how does it work, how you play it. It's a card game, so you need cards for it and some other things to make the game happen. And you start with the question. Okay, we are searching for an abstract formulation of a conflict, and that means you first need the concrete conflict. You have the concrete innovation challenge. Could be that Moritz already showed to you, or could be something like, how might we expand our product portfolio without increasing the development effort? A typical business question, or any other question. So it works for business questions and technical questions as well. So then the game will lead you to the abstract problem formulation. That is then how you go on. Yeah, and as it is a cards game, you'll start with the cards that are the 50 cards for 50 parameters or 39 for 39 parameters. You shuffle them and you give 4 to 5 cards to every player. It depends on the number of players. And the player have the cards, they see them, and then you have the rest of the cards in the middle of the table and you draw them in turn. So, and it works, you have 4 cards and you take a 5th one and then you see, okay, does this 5th one, this 5th card I just took, fit better to the problem, fit better to represent an abstract formulation of the concrete problem than all these 4 cards I already have on my hand. And if you say yes, then you take it. give one back on the middle of the table you do not like so much because it does not fit so much, or you remain with your 4 and give the other card back to the table. And that goes around until we use all the cards and we have checked all the cards. The next step is then to formulate the conflicts. And as experienced TRIZ users, you know there is the difference between the physical conflict and the technical conflict. And therefore, our game header prepares different areas. So if you have a card on your hand, which you say, oh, with that card, I can formulate a physical conflict, then you put it in the middle under the game header. If it is a card that makes sense with a pair as a technical conflict, then you create that technical conflict. And once all the conflicts are created with all the cards the players still have on their hand, then we have a simple way to prioritize them by giving points to them. And these points also are related to the players later on, because the players who put the cards with the most relevance, who got the most points, they are the winners of that game. But to be honest, the winners team, because they have prioritized conflicts. Yeah, and then that happens, what you all know, you have now the conflicts. If it's a physical conflict, you can use the separation principles. If it's a technical conflict, you can use the related matrix, 39 or 50, as we said before. And then that leads you to the solution principles. And to go on with that, you can use any other approach you are normally using, any ideation technique you prefer. Okay, so we have just a small thing, because we normally create with that game various interesting conflict pairs or physical conflicts, and to save them, not to forget them after the game, we created our conflict canvas, where you can put in a one-pager all important things, the question, the parameters of visualization, analogy, and finally a ranking. In addition to that conflict canvas I just talked about, we have 2 other elements of our easy playing kit for a game of conflicts. One is the game header, where you write down the question and where you have the categories for the physical and the technical conflicts. And you have a notepad where you can write down the conflicts, the numbers of the value of the prioritization and the points for every player, so that you can then finally award the winner of the game. And then we played it sometimes, we developed it, we played it sometimes, and then Corona came, pandemic, and it was difficult to meet, to sit together on a table to play it. And we have been a bit sad about that, because we ourselves liked it. We also played the game with others. And then we said, hey, let's find a solution. And we found a solution. So that what you see here are some screenshots of our hybrid game of conflict solution, where we played the game from different locations, connected with a Zoom conference, and everyone with a set of cards, and it worked wonderfully. We had a lot of joy with that. So happy to found a solution. Okay, last but not least, what are our experiences? They have been great. Really, we started with that, and when we played it the first game, we have been very excited about that, because we didn't know, does it work or does it not work? And it works really great. With every card you draw from the middle of the desk, your brain starts to think about, how can I connect this parameter to my problem? And does it fit better than the parameters I have in my hand or not? Really interesting experience. We got ideas about that we never have thought about. So we like it, and we played it with a lot of success together in our team and together with others. So yeah, that was our short journey to present you our game of conflicts, and we would be happy to answer some questions or on your remarks about that. Thank you very much so far. Okay, Moritz, do we have questions in the chat?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm back here. Thank you very much for your beautiful presentation. I really loved the presentation itself. And of course, I've seen a number of card games already built upon TRIZ. And as most of them, of course, are related to 14 value principles. I think that the major trouble with using the matrix is to find the association between specific parameters of your problem and abstract parameters which are in the matrix. But it's not a question yet. The question is a little bit different. You said that if you have that sort of card, you define technical conflict, and if you have that sort of card, you define physical conflict. But a physical conflict is actually a technical conflict is a part of a physical conflict. It's in a physical conflict, you have two opposite states or values, and in technical conflict, you just have one of them. So how do you, in this situation, decide, are you going with physical or technical conflict?
Yeah, let me say that's a bit gaming. So the one who has the card on his hand or on her hand might decide that, saying, okay, let me say the physical conflict. From my experience, I always perceive it as a stronger thing than a technical conflict because it's reducing it on the key. So the game works that way. Or we propose to play it that way, to saying, okay, first let's look if I have a physical conflict on my hand, and if I put the physical conflict in the middle of the under the game header, then that's already one conflict. And the interesting thing is the rules of the game to get the points for the players to see who's the winner. Let's say it's not so important who's the winner. Yeah. Nevertheless, it's a part of gaming. Will be rewarded if he puts the card as a physical conflict and if he's able to explain it to the others, because then he gets all the points, the priority points the card gets. If it is a technical conflict and two players share the two sides of the technical conflict, then everyone gets half of the points. So that's, we say, a small action to look for physical conflicts first.
Mm-hmm. Because basically physical and technical conflicts are just different models of the same conflict. That's what I wanted to say. All right, thank you very much. There are some questions. Okay, from Horst Henkrabe, but I think you already answered it.
Maybe the second question there, I could speak.
So Hans-Gerd Krabbe asked a question. I read the game was developed especially for design thinking community. How is it received there? Uli Wellenberg fought the TRIZ monster as one of our workshops.
Thank you. So the most important part, so I very much come from the design thinking community. I used to work with Uli in previous, so that's why it's a kind of a personal thing. But the most important part, the game is for everyone. But also, and that's actually one of the goals of the game, is to actually really introduce it into design thinking, because I think what design thinking can learn from TRIZ is really this very structured and very, very analytical approach, which sometimes in the design thinking world is underestimated and undervalued. And speaking of Uli, I know how he might have phrased this critique. And the second question that you had, is it already included in the design thinking approach? not officially in that sense. So we haven't played, also due to Corona, we haven't played it with the folks at HPI Potsdam yet, but that's definitely on our list. Yeah, so that's maybe, I hope that answers the question.
Just continuing within that direction, I would say that I spoke to guys from INSEAD and from IDEO, and now that at their creative phase of design thinking, they use a subset of TRIZ, just some principles. So yes, that's what I want to tell, not directly to you, probably you know it, but to the rest of community, that because we are often challenged with the question, design thinking or TRIZ? And I'm answering both because, well, of course, the current frameworks of IDEO and INSEAD, they have very limited number of TRIZ, only some principles. Okay, there was another question from Hans Hert. Has the approach been included by the DT folks in their portfolio?
That was the question I just answered.
Yes,
so not
exactly. Okay, there was another question, I think from Mr. Arthur. Does the game consider blockage being government sudden regulation prohibiting your access to the marketplace?
That's very interesting. Actually, maybe Eckhard, you can also say something to that, but we played the game with people from very different areas. So we haven't played it in this specific context of government regulations and so on. But what we found is that depending on the team's view and the team's kind of perception and definition and knowledge of their problem that they're working on, whatever the blockage that is there, they will be able to kind of identify or have it inside. So the game is not so much to identify the blockage, but to identify the conflicts that might have been due to some kind of blockage.
Right. So then another question is from my Michal Hallas, but it's more a suggestion. I would love to see a filmed game. How does it go? How it goes? Example, record it and put on YouTube. I guess it's a good idea. We will be waiting. Next question from Richard. Would you use this in case when you may get in a state of challenging a normal route of TRIZ approach?
Yeah, maybe Eckhard, if you have an answer to that, I'm not sure what exactly you mean by normal. So definitely from my perspective, what the game can help you with is also having a playful approach to it. So if you get stuck somehow, then this might help you. But Eckhard, I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps I can add something or giving my opinion to that. When I did projects using TRIZ as a methodology, always when it came to finding the conflicting parameters, we started with that sheet of paper where the 39 parameters have been written down, perhaps with some explanations on that. And it was, to be honest, I always thought, oh, that's a bit boring. So that is the thing you have to do. Then finally to come to the next step where you are allowed to ideate, where you're allowed to use the principles. And I think in just that way, it would be an interesting experience to do that, saying, okay, not necessarily in every process, but sometimes I think it would also be interesting for the facilitators to use another approach and use, instead of going through this list, a playful approach. So it is about 30 to 45 minutes. Yes, it does need more time, but as what we experienced when we played it ourselves is that it's much more intensive thinking about the relevant parameters. So I hope that answered the question.
Okay, I'm saying pretty sure, and as I could understand also that these gameful elements could be built into real process, just into real business practice. So why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So Richard mentions, I like your playful approach. Thank you, Richard. Okay, Dr. Eckhard, thanks a lot, and your team, thanks a lot for a wonderful presentation. Yeah. All right. we'll have a picture. So
Yeah.
okay, good luck.
Goodbye.
Good luck. Okay.